Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're launching a full-blown investigation into the hidden culprits that are making modern eating feel like such a massive uphill battle. If you've ever felt like your appetite literally has a mind of its own, or that just navigating the grocery store is like walking through a complete minefield of health claims, you are definitely not alone. Today, we're putting our modern food environment squarely under the microscope. All right, let's just jump right into this totally jarring statistic. 57%. Yep, according to recent dietary data, a massive 57% of the average U.S. adult's daily calories now come from ultra-processed foods. Just let that sink in for a second. That is more than half of the energy fueling our bodies arriving in these highly engineered, industrially manufactured packages. This isn't just some slight shift in our habits, it's a complete fundamental transformation of what it actually means to eat.
So that naturally begs the big question, right? Why are we eating so much of this stuff? I mean, we all know what a real apple looks like, we know what a piece of chicken looks like, but what on earth is going on inside these brightly colored packages? How exactly is our food being engineered to trick our biology into over-consuming? Today, we're going to unpack the hard science behind those cravings.
Here's the roadmap for today's explainer. We're looking at the modern diet dilemma, what are ultra-processed foods, the science of overeating, unmasking hidden sugars, beyond obesity, chronic risks, and finally, defending your diet. Let's get right into it. Section 1, the modern diet dilemma. Let's take a quick look at the big picture of how our whole food system just radically transformed over the last century. Way back in the 1900s, things like agricultural and industrial advancements were genuinely just about food safety and, feeding a growing population. But hit the 1960s and bam, things changed. Government incentives for cheap commodity crops really opened the floodgates for this highly profitable, highly processed food market. The absolute abundance of cheap ingredients allowed corporations to mass-produce these hyper-palatable, shelf-stable items. And if you look at the end of that timeline, it is wild. Right alongside this manufacturing boom, obesity rates in the U.S. shot up from around 30.5% in the early 2000s to over 42% by 2018. So the whole system basically shifted from actual nourishment to mass profitability, and well, our bodies are footing the bill. Moving on to Section 2, what are ultra-processed foods? To really nail down our prime suspect here, we have to strictly define what ultra-processed actually means.
Okay, so here's the crucial part. We are not just talking about your standard cooked, frozen, or canned veggies here. Using the widely recognized NOVA classification system, we're looking specifically at Group 4, ultra-processed foods. These are industrial formulations. They might have food-derived substances in them, sure, but they look absolutely nothing like raw, whole foods. We're talking about products heavily engineered with emulsifiers, stabilizers, artificial colors, and flavorings. Stuff you literally would never find in your own kitchen pantry.
Now, what's really fascinating here is the stark contrast. A minimally processed diet is exactly what your body evolved to run on. High fiber, top-notch protein, essential water, vitamins, the works. But ultra-processed foods actively push those vital nutrients completely out of the way. They strip out the water and fiber so the box can sit on a shelf for years, and they replace all that good stuff with cheap, energy-dense fillers, saturated fats, added sugars, crazy amounts of sodium. Basically, you're packing in way more calories, but actually starving your body of real nutrition. All right, Section 3, the science of overeating. Let's see exactly how all of this turns into serious physiological manipulation. Ever wonder why it is so incredibly hard to eat just one single potato chip or just one cookie? Let me tell you, it is not a lack of willpower, it is straight up biology. These ultra-processed foods are literally formulated to be hyper-palatable. When you hit your tongue with this highly engineered ratio of sugar, fat, and salt, it just lights up your brain's reward system like a Christmas tree. Its intense pleasure signal completely overrides your body's natural feeding breaks. Normally, a hormone called leptin tells your brain, okay, we have enough energy, stop eating. But these foods actually blunt those satiety signals. They literally drive us to eat for pleasure instead of energy. And then there's the actual physical structure of the food, which is what we can call the Trojan horse effect. Because these foods are usually stripped of fiber and have this ultra-soft texture, you barely even have to chew them. Clinical trials actually show that we eat these foods at a much faster rate. We're talking significantly more grams and calories per minute compared to unprocessed whole foods. So before your gut can even tap your brain on the shoulder and say, hey, we're full down here, you've already downed hundreds of extra calories. It sneaks right past your body's natural defenses. Which brings us to Section 4, unmasking hidden sugars. This is absolutely one of the primary weapons in the ultra-processed arsenal. If you look at the back of a package, the ingredient list can read like a shady suspect's list of aliases. The CDC points out that sugar hides under all sorts of names just to blend in. You've got sucrose, dextrose, maltose, high fructose corn syrup, molasses, agave, the list goes on. But here's a super handy rule of thumb. Most ingredients that end in the letters OSE, yep, that is just sugar wearing a disguise. Now, obviously you expect sugar in a candy bar, but check out these everyday Trojan horses. Jarred pasta sauce, it tastes super savory, but companies pump it full of added sugar just to balance out the cheap, highly acidic tomatoes they use. Then you have protein bars and flavored yogurts. They totally have this health halo around them, but if you actually look close, a lot of them pack in more sugar than actual protein. And flavored milk, sure, dairy has natural sugars, but the chocolate and vanilla kinds add massive scoops of processed sugar right on top. These aren't even sweet treats, they're just everyday pantry staples secretly spiking our blood sugar. Let's look at Section 5, Beyond Obesity, Chronic Risks. Because the collateral damage here goes way, way beyond just weight gain. This is absolutely crucial to understand. These risks happen independently of weight gain. Even if the scale isn't moving, pounding ultra-processed foods actively drives systemic health issues. The massive sodium loads put mechanical stress on your heart, driving up hypertension. Plus, the low-quality fats and constant blood sugar spikes fuel chronic low-grade inflammation and insulin resistance. It's basically a toxic cocktail that builds the perfect environment for cardiovascular disease and metabolic dysfunction over time. And down on a microscopic level, your digestive tract is really taking a beating. Your gut microbiome absolutely thrives on dietary fiber, but since ultra-processed foods are stripped of it, they literally starve your beneficial gut bacteria. And without those good bacteria doing their jobs, we lose the short-chain fatty acids that keep our intestinal walls locked up tight. Without them, the barrier gets weak, leading to increased gut permeability, or what a lot of folks call leaky gut. That lets pro-inflammatory microbes slip right into your bloodstream. It literally bridges the gap between a bad diet and total body inflammation. All right, let's talk solutions. Section 6, Defending Your Diet. Let's get into a concrete defense strategy you can actually use against these industrial formulations. The CDC recommends a really practical step-by-step technique for reading labels. Step 1, always flip that package over and check for total sugars. But do not stop there. Step 2, zero in on the added sugars. This is the absolute game changer because it separates the naturally occurring sugars, like you'd find in an apple or plain milk, from the heavily processed junk they pump in at the factory. And finally, step 3, scan that ingredient list for those OSE aliases so you don't get tricked by industry jargon. And I want to point out this really fantastic quote right from the CDC. It says, if some of your favorite foods contain added sugars, it doesn't mean you have to cut them out completely. You can enjoy these foods in moderation. Listen, the goal of this explainer is absolutely not to make you fear food or to tell you to be perfect 100% of the time. It's just about pulling back the curtain so you know exactly what you are putting in your body. It's about being mindful of portions and dodging those not-so-sweet surprises hiding in your everyday meals. Armed with all this knowledge, you now have the power to take back control of your diet, your appetite, your whole metabolic health. You see exactly how these foods are engineered to bypass your biology, and you've got the tools to spot those hidden sugars masking themselves on the labels. So I'm going to leave you with this. The next time you're walking down the grocery aisle, totally surrounded by bright boxes and loud health claims, will you be able to spot the Trojan horses hiding in plain sight, or will you let the food industry decide what fuels your body? Thanks for joining me on this explainer. Stay curious, stay informed, and I'll see you on the next one.